Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is a kind of a modern house. Very nice, very nice. It's a good use of extrusions. There's definitely ways we can remove the, take out some polys, and I'll be actually talking about that today, so that's perfect. So like, if I'm gonna be really picky here, see the top, how it has these loops around? We could probably just cut those out and the surface shouldn't change at all. You know what? This is awesome for your first go at it. I'm pretty stoked. This is great too. This is a good example of what I'm assuming is normal extrusion.
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. Great. Yeah, this is awesome. Good job. All right, let's take a look at this one. What is this?
Oh yeah.
Is this yours, Matt?
Yeah, I only got like 20 minutes to spend on it, unfortunately, but...
You get a little fancy. I like your, I like the bevel on the top part of it. That's very cool. Nice.
I'm just gonna grab some screenshots of mine here.
Yeah, for sure. That's perfect. Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the hotkey to set the orbit around the origin?
Yeah, so you want to click on your whole object first. So, yeah, and then you want to hit delete on your numpad.
There we go.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver. Beautiful. Can you hit Z and go to wireframe? Nice, okay. It's, yeah, it kind of helps if you like pause it, because then it gets clear. I guess I'm realizing that now. It's just Discord.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good topology. You don't really have too many loops in places that don't need to be. It's a good use of an n-gon up top. Yeah, nice work. Good job. Good job. Man, you guys are on fire. Right on. Great. Well, I can't wait to show you guys more of what we got. We got a bunch more tools. Let's see, Duncan just with plumbing. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Is that plumbing down there? Serious? Oh, word.
Oh
It
man.
was way down.
Beautiful. Okay, so I see some windows. We got a nice roof, a bit of a art. Wow, good job. Jeez. I'm pretty with just some basic tools. You guys are doing a hell of a job.
Yeah, with those extra polys, I was actually using Subdivide.
Okay.
Just to increase the poly count. It's essentially what I did with the house, yeah.
Okay, okay. And you know what? There's sometimes it is beneficial to do that, right? Where we want to work with more polys to start with while we're kind of forming it and shaping it. And then at the end, we can take a look and figure out which ones aren't helping us and then cut them out. So I can show you that as well too. That's another option. I remember Dylan and I were trying to figure out how to make this crazy modular piece. You remember that one, Dylan? And it had a corner that was basically like 90 degrees, and then it smoothed out to a circle.
Oh, that fucking thing.
It was a nightmare, but we ended up doing a really high poly workflow and then just decimated it, and that worked quite well. Do you have any other angles, Duncan, or?
Yeah, sorry, I thought I was
Okay.
gonna post two.
Cool.
I didn't post the other one.
No worries. So that's pretty great. I like how we all have very different styles of houses too. We got Duncan with the more kind of cottage-looking house, and then Matt has his kind of more industrial rooftop. It was very cool, and then Ralph has the I would say kind of urban, sort of like modern feel to it. Very nice. Okay, beauty.
Number 3. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, look at that thing. That really does go down. Oh, and you pulled a, looks like you pulled a face out too. Wow. Nice job. Okay. You guys are getting real fancy. Well, this is awesome. You guys are killing it. So, we keep this up, we'll be really good. It's really cool. Just gonna make sure. Okay, my sound's still going. So let's just pick up where we left off. So I think we ended on extrude, and then we went to inset. I provided a couple more pictures of extrude. One thing I got to talk about is there's face mode extrude, edge mode extrude, and vertex mode extrude. And very quickly, you'll see what that is. So I have my shape. It's like a trapezoid. I don't know what it is. Okay, so if I do a normal extrude up top, do you guys see that?
Yep.
Right? Okay, so just a classic extrude. Now, if I were to go into edge mode and then grab this edge right here and then extrude it out, do you see I'm pulling a face now? That is a workflow entirely. So typically when you do that, you want to lock it to an axis. So lock it X, and then you can move it and then pick a direction, right? So now this is just a single face. And then what you can do is you can pick other faces and you can kind of weld them together. So I could do that again. This is like a very manual way of doing it, but it is doable. Typically you don't want to be doing this too much, and then you can actually merge these two together. It's like Alt M or something. Yeah, okay, Alt M, and then we'll go at last. Okay, so now I just connected those. It's definitely not the fastest way. You can see it's a very slow workflow, but that's kind of what edge extrude can do. You'll see people make cars this way sometimes, and it is kind of a way to wrap a shape around something. Okay, there we go. So then the most obscure version of extrude is when you're doing vertex. You see how it just pulled out that? In fact, if I were to go into object mode and unselect it, you normally wouldn't even see this. It couldn't even render that because it's just a single edge with no face. So it's pretty weird. You can do it, but I suppose there will be that one time it might be handy. So, but for the most part, I find it's best to keep to faces when we're extruding, right? So extrude out, extrude, and then everybody's happy. It's good. So yeah, kind of cool. All right, we'll go back to our slides. Yeah. These are the 3 different modes if we want to go back and review. And then this is a picture of that just so we know what edge pulling is more advanced. Okay, so inset, pretty self-explanatory. You're making a, it's hard to explain this without using the word inset. You're basically kind of like it's like making a picture frame around something, you know what I mean? Very handy. Okay, so we talked about this a bit. Let's go into more detail. So bevel. So we got Control B for bevel, scroll for segments. So then this is sort of like extrude in the fact that face, edge, and vertex mode all do different things. Again, vertex mode gets very niche. And then, face mode is the one we'll probably be doing the most, along with edge. It is a lot more common to see a bevel done in edge mode than an extrude done in edge mode, in my opinion. So without further ado, let's go try that out. We have our handy little shape. So I could start off by saying maybe I want to round this corner out. So cool little thing, if I scroll my mouse wheel, do you see how it's adding more segments as I go?
Sweet.
It is unbelievably powerful. That is something that Macs can't touch. Like, it's not as fast as this, in my opinion. So we don't want to have this many segments because that's kind of too many. We still have to think about like how many do we actually need, and in this case I would say 4 is a nice number if we're trying to do that, or maybe 3. Okay, But if I go back and if I do this again, this is technically called a chamfer at this point when we have a single one. And then when we get more of them, they're now, it's considered a bevel, I believe, yeah. Okay, so then we can go and select all of these guys. So that's done with, I go Shift, Control, and Alt, and then I press that, and it does a ring around them. Okay, so I can now do this, right, along all sides, but okay, you got to be careful when we're beveling. You have to watch to make sure you're not running it into each other, or that'll happen. And see how gross that looks? Quite bad. But if we keep it so it plays nicely with the other ones, it should be good. So now we have this cool shape. This isn't running into this. We're good. That's pretty cool. So if we did a face extrude, it does it a little bit different. You see how it handles that? Different kind of extrusion. So really the best way to mess around with this is just to go about, make your shapes, and then play with bevel and see what different results you can get. So when we're doing a face extrude, you can get really cool stuff where it actually will figure out the taper and kind of round the corners off in a different way. But if we went into edge mode and did it just on one, it'll look very different, right? And then in fact you could actually do that. I'm going to show you a different kind of shape we can make. So now I'm going to extrude here and then extrude these two at the same rate. So if I do an operation and I plan to do it at the same time, it means that they'll have the exact same bevel, which sounds simple, but it's something we want to remember. So if we want something to be the same, we should be selecting it as well and doing the operation at the same time. So we've selected that, and kaboom, we have this cool shape. And then because we stuck around and we preserved pretty decent edge flow, we can now go and select this and then this, right? So this is a continual edge, this is a continual edge. We can bevel that out, and now we have some crazy looking thing. Okay, but do you see the error there?
Uh-oh.
Exactly. Thank you. Uh-oh. Exactly. So this is like considered a pinch point. This is our closest area in the geometry, meaning that it is our restricting area. So we can only really go about that far until we get issues. If we push it, you'll get that. So what I recommend is after you do something like a bevel, especially a complicated one like this, always take a look around. See if you have screwed it up. If you haven't, give yourself a pat on the back and keep going. So this is kind of a good time to talk about this, which is edge slide. Okay, so see this? Maybe I want to move this edge down more, right? But I want to keep the geometry the same. So if I hit G twice, it'll allow me to keep it locked into the axis of the it'll preserve the shape, but allow me to slide this edge. So I can hit G twice, so you can think of it like good job, GG, good game. Press it twice, and then now we can actually take these and kind of even them out a little bit. So that is another Blender awesome thing. And then now it kind of allows us to distribute that a little bit better. Very handy. Other times you might actually have to go and fix the rotation of it. You can see that if we oh wait, Y? Yeah, you always got to make sure you're on the right axis, but sometimes you might actually have to go in and then rotate it a little bit to correct it. Now there's definitely add-ons and things to help this experience go a little bit faster, but at the beginning I do want us to learn the vanilla way, figure out the best way to do it without having to resort to add-ons, because maybe there's a way we can avoid it. So now we got this cool shape. If we do want to smooth it, remember just the right click, and you go shade smooth, and then boom, it's smooth. Now if it's something where you want, say, a sharp spot, you can go select these areas and then tell it to be auto smooth on, and then we have those areas selected. We can go Control E, mark sharp. See, that's now sharp. It looks kind of goofy because you wouldn't normally do that. Okay, so that's sort of a preview of all the stuff we're going to be learning. So mark sharp is one of those things we'll spend a little bit more time on smoothing, and a couple other things. So don't worry if we went a little fast there. Okay, so how are we feeling with bevel right now?
Really good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, feeling alright.
And we kind of understand that edge bevel, and if you limit your beveling selection, it'll give you a totally different result.
I'll probably just have to review the clip tomorrow, see what I missed, but I have a pretty general understanding of it.
Okay, and I think most of it will probably be discovery on your own, like when you see someone else do it and versus actually playing around with it yourself. It's very, very different. So this is now, we're on to vertex, and you see if we vertex bevel, it's going to just automatically assume it meant that edge because we have two. And if I do one, it won't even let me bevel it because it's like that's a stupid idea. So then to override it, I think we have to go Control Shift B, and it's like, okay, I guess so. if you want to do that. But look at the weird geometry we're making. Kind of bizarre. Anyways, if we ever do want to do that, it is done with Control Shift B, and then you're basically forcing the computer to bevel the vertexes. I wouldn't say this is great geometry though, so let's just kind of keep that in mind. It's for really obscure stuff. There's a lot better ways to do this, but it's quite nice because it does create kind of round shapes, I guess, which can be actually super handy sometimes. So let's go take a look at what we got now. This is probably going to be a bit of a quick class too, so we'll see where we go. Again, here's an example. I had a roof here, I beveled that, and I can just smooth it right out. Something also to consider is that when we're working low to high poly, bevel is a way to kind of start getting us to a little bit of a higher poly version of it. And that would be like called bevel workflow, I suppose. So this probably, like these three tools, extrude, inset, bevel, are going to be some of the most powerful tools in Blender or anything. Okay, so next subject, we got loop cut and subdivide. We talked about subdivide yesterday. It's not just for cubes, it's for anything you want, I suppose. It's just a way to add more geometry and smooth things out. And then more importantly though, I think loop cut is probably going to be one of those big ones. So we'll go back to Blender, and then let's throw some loop cuts in here. So typically you need a shape that has good enough edge flow so that it'll recognize it can put a loop there. And then do you see when I go Control and then R, it'll allow me to place loops depending on where my mouse is. So if I have my mouse in this region, it's kind of guessing I want it there. If I put it more aligned to here, it'll switch to this axis, and then if I want it there, I kind of have to point it in that specific spot. So you do have to kind of like direct it where you want to be, but once you get it, we're going to go left click and confirm it. So once you've confirmed it, I haven't pressed anything else, I'm allowed to slide it. Now maybe I want it all the way at the bottom, maybe I want it all the way top, and if you want it in the middle, you can actually go, so left click means confirm the slide, and right click means don't do it, reset it and put it back in the middle. So if I right click it, it then placed it in the middle. If I want to completely undo it, I Control Z, or I can just dissolve the edge because it's now selected. The other cool thing with Blender too is as you go, each each step is remembered as a selection. So now my new selection after I put a loop cut through is actually that new cut. So then here's the other cool thing is if I do another loop cut after already loop cutting it, it'll allow me to split it. So this is starting to behave like a connect in 3ds Max. So do you remember in 3ds Max you can connect something and then you can tell it how close and how far to be? The loop cut tool will behave that way, which is quite nice. And then if you scroll your mouse wheel, you can tell it how many segments. So most things in Blender, there's a component to scrolling your mouse wheel to tell it more or less. In this situation, I'm just going to go 2. And then now that I've made 2, it has selected the rings around it. So if I do another one, it'll get kind of nasty. So if I do want to continue on, I'm going to have to get rid of these vertical ones. And then watch, if I do it again, I can just keep doing that, right? Quite cool. So now I've done that, it's selected these faces in these specific spots. I can go Alt-E for extrude menu, extrude along normals, and get some really kind of cool looking geometry, right? Like that's quite neat.
What was the shortcut for loop cut?
It is Control-R.
Okay, got it, thanks.
Yeah, so we hit Control-R, it'll bring it up. And then again, so first thing it wants us to do is pick where it is. And do you see how it's actually performing an edge slide as well? So that's an edge slide. We click left to confirm it or right to not confirm it. And then it actually does pop up a contextual menu as well. So it lets us do number of slides, smoothness. Smoothness is interesting because you can kind of bow it in and out. So that is a bit of a new thing. And you can change your fall off, your factor. It's all actually quite cool. The old Blender was just kind of do that and you didn't have that as much. Okay, so loop cuts I think are quite handy, and if we want to keep it specific to maybe one thing, we have a couple options. We could do a loop cut, pick it, and then just go from here. And I'm going to show you a cool selection trick. I'm going to hold down Control and then click left. Now see how it went from here to here to here, but it didn't pick this one. The reason why is that's called nearest path selection, pick shortest path. So it's going to, you can think of like electricity does this or whatever, it'll figure out the quickest way to get from this edge to this edge. And I kind of told it to go around based off of my selection. So that's quite handy. So then I go Control and X, and now I only have one edge. Okay, and as you probably guessed it, what is this Control and X shenanigan? It is called a dissolve edge. So Control X removes edges in a very smart and less destructive way. So I'll show you the alternative to Control X. It's kind of bad. If we select that again and we go X, delete edges. What the heck? Do you see how it actually just killed the faces and everything around it? In Max, you have to deal with this a lot more because it's not as smart. I guess it'll just kind of do that. There are ways to remove edges smart in Max too, but the kind of default is Control X in Blender. So I'm going to go pick nearest path, Control X for dissolve edge, and it figures out to remove those edges while keeping the faces around it intact. So that's something we want to engrave in our brains. And if I click on this and maybe I want to slide it now, I go GG, good game, and I can slide that thing anywhere I want. Very, very handy. So now if I want to duplicate it again, I can use bevel to duplicate it. So bevel is also a way to duplicate. So I just went Control B, and then just like that, I wasn't actually beveling it, but in a way I did it. So now I can have this cool shape. So bevel has so many ways of using it. It's not just to round it all the time. So quite handy. What else? I'm gonna go do that. So now if I click on these two, and maybe I want to draw a edge between these two, I can go right click, and if I go subdivide, that'll do that. Now our smoothness kind of keeps it either this weird thing, or I can have it on 0 and it'll subdivide it. Number of cuts will tell me how many I want. So if we want it localized to that spot, that's what subdivide is going to do. So again, subdivide being this one on the right, it's quite handy in different ways. So subdivide you can think of as like a localized loop cut. Quite good. Okay, what else I got to show you guys?
Sorry, was there a keyboard shortcut for the subdivide? I missed
Oh,
that.
yeah, it's just your right-click contextual menu. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. And do you guys see how I have loop tools up here, and you guys don't?
I don't think we do have that.
Technically, every Blender has loop tools, but it's not turned on. So what we need to do to turn it on is we go Edit, Preferences, okay? And then once we're in Preferences, we want to go to Add-ons. We click on Add-ons and we want to search, just type in Loop, and then Loop, it'll say Mesh Loop Tools, and click that thing. Let me know when you guys have got that.
I didn't do it. I just wrote it down.
Okay. Well, okay, so this is probably arguably one of the most important add-ons for Blender, because all of the other add-ons kind of reference it. In fact, it's almost so standard that when you watch any tutorial and stuff like that, you'll see people be like, oh, and then we'll bridge it with loop tools. It's actually an add-on, but it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's really just part of Blender. Okay, so
Yeah, I made sure to put a star on it, so tomorrow when I practice again, I'll be sure to do it.
Like, I'll show you just how powerful loop tools is. It basically gives you more of these types of things I'm talking about. So if I select these and you see how I did them both in the same operation? Because I know that I'm doing the same thing and I want them both to be roughly distributed the same. So I selected the bottom face and the top face, and then I used an inset. So I got the top, I got the bottom. I'm going to right click, find loop tools, and then tell it to bridge. So that just connected all of that together. Isn't that handy?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Super handy. Man, like the amount of time it would take to connect all that in Max, jeez. I don't even want to think about it. Okay, let's try this out. Oh yeah. Okay, do you see what happened when I did that? I have these selected, and if I bevel it, it actually kind of creates a ring around it. That's trippy. Okay, and then even weirder is if I select these, just these guys, and then I bevel that. What do we think is going to happen if I bevel those?
Z fighting?
Nope. Maybe. We might get there. It should actually smooth out those corners. It'll try to make it circular is what bevel tries to do. So see, that's only one. If I do 2, 3, see how it's trying to make that circular? It's trying to round it off. Very weird. But then what we can do, here's another awesome selecting trick. I'm going to select in the middle, and then I'm going to go Control plus. So Control plus is going to grow selection. I'm going to go X for delete faces, and then I'm going to go back to here, select with Shift and Alt, and then I'll get a ring, a loop selection around there. I'm going to go F for face, and then now it just turned it into one hang-on. We still have this kind of gross stuff to deal with. Not perfect, but for right now it's fine. I wouldn't recommend that, but it's fine. Okay. So now I got that shape. So just give you guys a bit of an idea of what you can do with the bevel tool. Quite handy. But
for that shape, what I might suggest doing is selecting the vertex in that thing and merging it to the edge.
oh yes, okay. So you could take this, and then go Alt M. That, yeah, much better. See the difference? Thank you, Dylan. Alt M, and then if I pick first, it means it's going to go to the first thing I selected. That's kind of gross. I don't want to do that. Alt M, and then I want to say at last. So making sure that I click this one first, and then the second one I click is now my last one. Alt M for merge at last. So a little bit of cleanup work, but if we look at it, it is a lot better now. And say for example, if we wanted to, I could hit Shift and Alt, and that's going to do a loop select, but a loop will end at a weird pole, which is here and here. So then I can actually use a loop select to decimate any geometry I don't want. So I'm going to go Shift Alt click, and then I'm going to go Control X to decimate that down. Same with these, just to kind of show you guys how we can get
Wow. My connection just crashed there, so I missed like, what, 10 seconds
Oh really? Okay.
of video? Yeah.
Shoot. Here's the other thing too. I am going to be trying to post these guys specifically afterwards. I'm doing a screen record right off my computer, and I have really good sound that's being separate, so it's not being fed through Discord. So if you guys do need to go back and watch the video, it's going to be nice and crystal clear. You'll be able to see all the mouse movements. It'll be 1080p. But I'll do my best. Like, if you let me know if you missed something. So, anyways, so what we did there, Ralph, is we were just selecting the loops with Shift and Alt, right? That'll do that, and then we were decimating it by using Control X.
Ah, got it.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's basically it. So we have this kind of crazy shape. This is, we got some n-gons going on here, but it's not terrible. This is a triangle. Well, not perfect again, but there are some times you're gonna have to have those shapes. So growing selection, I love. We're gonna go to face, right? 3 for face, click on it, and then we go Control and then plus on the numpad. Okay, do you see how that basically, and if we go Control minus, it'll go back. But if we click it a couple times, now we're able to select all of this stuff because we clicked on the thing in the middle. And if I go to the other side, I pick the thing in the middle, Control plus plus, and then I can actually go X, delete the faces, go back to 2 to go into edge mode, click, and then hit F to fill face. So I just cleaned that up real quick. Kind of cool. All right, let's go back, see what we want to talk about next. Okay, knife tool. This one, okay, so we already talked about edge slide, so I'm going to move this up actually, up a slide. We get what edge slide does, right? It basically, we can have the edge loop be up here, and then we can tell it to move down here. That's basically what it does. It preserves the direction. I'll show you the alternative to edge slide and why it's important. So we're going to go Control R and put an edge loop in here. We hit the right mouse button to just tell it to go in the middle. If we hit the left one, we can offset it. Okay, so now I'm going to try to move it up without an edge slide, and I'll show you just how much of a pain in the ass this is. So I'm going to hit G to move it up, Z to lock it to the up axis. So as we move up and down, do you see how it's changing and deforming the shape? Right? That's frustrating. And then if I want to try to fix it, I now have to scale it and guess where it should be. So I'm going to guess that's correct. And in Max, it's typically, I think they might have just added edge slide, but for a long time, that's how you had to do it. And if I want to move it down, I got to go G, Z, move it down, and then scale it again, try to guess. Oh, huge pain in the butt. With edge slide, it's smart enough to know, so I hit GG, and then it just moves it perfectly. Not messing up your geometry, allows you to kind of distribute things in a nice way. It's great. Yeah, quite handy. Okay, so knife tool. This is one of those tools, because I remember in 3ds Max there's like weld, all of that kind of stuff, right? And that's kind of how you get into the more nitty gritty, and you're manually fixing things and connecting them and doing what you want. Knife is basically a lot of these tools in one. It's unbelievably powerful, but it's also kind of sloppy if you're not using it right. And the thing that I think knife particularly can get confusing for beginners is that it's kind of a multi-step process. Like you even see here it says after activated, before activated. So you can just keep hitting buttons after you hit K to activate knife, and it'll do different things with your knife tool. So we'll spend a little bit of time practicing, specifically because knife tool is a little bit crazy. So right now I'm specifically going to move my view in a weird way, right? And we can all see this, right? It's good so far? Okay, so I'm going to hit K to activate knife tool. And you see how when I move over the object it has the green. So I'm going to click, and then I can move it anywhere I want. I'm going to click up here, and then I'm going to click down here. To confirm it, I hit enter. Okay, so but that was based off of the perspective I was looking at. When I move it around, you can really see it's kind of like very crazy. But do you see that it didn't include the back face? It only did the front face. Okay, so now we can actually go cut through the whole object. So we hit K to bring up our knife tool. We click and we get it going, and then we hit Z, and Z means cut through for some reason. So it's going to cut all the way through now. So as soon as I click on the last one, I hit enter. If we take a look, it's sliced all the way through our object. So very handy. Okay, and we'll try it out again. We'll go knife tool, and if we hold the control before we even click, do you see that? It wants to go to the center between this vertex and this vertex. It wants to lock in the center. So I hold down control, I click it, I keep control held down, and now I locked. I made a perfect even split between these guys. So control makes it very, very, very handy. And then even more, if I hit 1 to go into front orthographic view, I am going to activate knife tool again. I'm going to hit K, and then now I'm going to hit C. C is basically going to constrain it. So see how it's like 45 degrees, 90 degrees. It's basically keeping it nice and straight. So I can do that. I can just be slicing through at these like crazy, very straight lines. So that works works best when you have it set up in a front view. The reason why is if I have knife tool now and I hit C, it is still going to be straight, but because perspective is on, it's not going to be lined up with your object. So you have to consider the perspective and the fact it projects it onto your object. Okay, how do we feel about the knife tool?
Solid.
Yeah?
Yep.
It's pretty wild, pretty fun. So specifically here, this is going to be good for you guys to reference. After activated means you have to hit K first, right? You can deactivate it in a couple ways. I'll show you how. Okay, so I hit K. To deactivate it, I can right click, right? And once I right click, it's gone. You'll see your mouse cursor turn into a knife. And then, so I hit K again. I can start clicking around. And if it's not actually cutting through your object, it just does nothing. So now, once I cut through my object, it actually enter to confirm it, and you'll cut it. Okay, so And you know, in a lot of cases, the knife tool is handy. So say for example, if I wanted to cut through this, find the center of the object, hit enter, then maybe I want to bevel it again. Oops, I have this selected. I want to bevel that. I can scroll my wheel, tell how many segments I want. So maybe I want there to be 3 segments. Okay, I'm going to slide this. I'm going to use GG to slide it down. I'm going to pick this one, GG to slide it up. And then now I want to specifically do a knife tool from here to here. This is not going to be accurate at all because it's just my guess. And then I'm going to go there. But you see it still worked. It basically, if we look at our vertexes, it actually inserted a vertex here, and then it connected it, and then it kept all of the topology appropriate. So it's pretty smart. It does a lot for you, and it's a good way to approach things. If I go extrude, I can bring it in, and then just like that, I got this cool little shape. So I guess if we are using knife tool, accuracy is key. If we're sloppy about it, I'll make the same shape, but I'll do a sloppy job. You'll see just where knife tool can look gronk, you know, if I'm not really being accurate here. Okay, so we just made, oops, we go to 3 to face. We just made the same thing, but see how that's kind of weird. That's not nice. So, lots of power. However, we want to make sure we're trying to keep it accurate. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so we got dissolve edge. We talked about that. Do you guys got questions?
Not really.
It's pretty self-explanatory. It basically removes the edge in a non-destructive way. So that's about it. Okay, now we got bridge and fill. So bridge, quite handy. I can go back and show you some more examples of bridge. I'm going to go and delete this object. I'm going to go X for delete. Okay. Shift A for add menu, and then go make a cube. And then I'm going to go ahead and go into edit mode, and then right click and subdivide it. I'm going to turn up my copies. So see right now, I only have a middle one. I actually want it to have more of a Rubik's Cube kind of setup. So changing your number of cuts sometimes can help drastically for that. So now I'm going to go back into it, and I left that contextual menu just by clicking. I'm going to go to 3 to turn on face mode. I'm going to go to the back side and then click on the other face. So with bridge, and this is a nifty little loop tool feature, I'm going to go bridge. So what it did is it cut a hole, and it cut another hole, and then it made a new face here and connected all this stuff without me having to do anything. It's just that smart. So that can be really, really handy. I'm curious if I do this and I select these internal rings and then I bevel it. Look at that. Isn't that weird? So in a way, I just made like a crazy thing with a circle in the middle. So this is kind of gross. We do have some gross geometry around here. Again, like Dylan would probably have some better ideas on how to, if you maybe did that. See, I just used Control X to decimate that. It just brought it into these points. These are still n-gons, but because it's lined up on the z-axis, it's not moving around. It's not giving us render errors at the moment. So, kind of cool. That's bridge. Now let's talk about fill. So you saw me do a little bit of fill. Okay, so I have my object here, gonna right click and subdivide. Gonna crank this up so we have this again. So we're up to 2 cuts. I go into face, and then I'm gonna delete it. Just like that. I punched a hole out, I went X, and then deleted the face, X, delete the face. I'm gonna go to 2 to select this, I go Shift and Alt to select loop, and that's how you do that. So just so you know, to select loops, you go Shift Alt, and then to select multiple loops, and then you just keep it pressed down. You don't let go, and then you keep it pressed down, and then you can do that just like that. Interesting. Okay, so Control Alt is your ring selection, and then Control Alt. Do you see you have to press Shift to actually remember the last selection? So if I add Shift, it remembers to add. Control and Alt is ring selection, and then Shift and Alt is loop selection. Okay. Okay, so we'll do loop selection, Shift Alt, and then we hit F to fill the face. All right, so now if we have, I'm gonna go back, and then I'm gonna go subdivide. I'm gonna make a few of these so I can show why we want grid fill sometimes. I'm gonna go ahead and just delete this big chunk, and then now I have a bigger problem to deal with. It's not just one face I have to fill, it's a few. If I hit F, it'll actually just make a big n-gon. It doesn't connect it. It doesn't really think about the topology. So to fix that, I can go to Control F for face menu. And then you'll see there's fill, and then there's grid fill. So we want to try grid fill for this one. So when you click grid fill, it'll actually consider the geometry around it and do its best to connect it together, which saves a ton of time. So I have grid fill on, and see if I change my span, it'll try to figure out different ways to do it. So turns out the span of 2 is just perfect. I don't need to change it. Enter. Okay. And then I think the last thing we can focus on for today, because this is kind of a lot of tools, is the proportional editing tool. Okay, so I'll just go back a bit. What I was trying to say is, like, the old way of doing it would be that you know, you select and then you add to the outside, so Control Alt, and then you go S, and then you know, see, but you try to do it a little bit at a time, and it's messy, right? It's not really nice. So it's not a good way to approach that, but if I wanted to have this kind of bow out, I could just turn on O. So do you see this up here? Just lit up when I hit O. So O is proportional editing, and then I scale it again, and now you see I have a circle. So I can scroll my wheel and adjust the size of the circle. So when I do that, and then I'm scrolling my wheel, see it, if I have a smaller circle, it means a smaller sphere of influence. It basically means that it is proportionally editing the geometry around it as well, with a certain amount of fall off. So I could create this crazy cool shape, and it's very smooth and very beautiful, just like that, which is quite neat. And the reason why I have this many rings is because it's to demonstrate the smoothness of the shape, and sometimes if you do want things to deform, you're going to need more loops, but that's just, you know, whatever. So then I can go here, I can select this loop with Control and Alt, again, loop selection, and then I can bevel this off, and I can kind of make that pretty if I'm into that. Oh, you see that? I just started the animation, so I want to go back, get out of here. It can be frustrating. And then, yeah, same thing. So we can do that. If we wanted this to be even, what should we have done? If we wanted both of these to be exactly the same, what should I have done there?
Select on both, right?
Yep, select them both and then do the operation. So that's kind of why, like, everything in 3D is basically destructive, but we just want to think about doing things in kind of batches, or like this is the first step, and then the next step. Before we do things, we want to think, is there anything else we need to do that needs to be the same, right? So then now I have them all selected evenly. If I do this operation, they're all going to be perfectly the same. That's quite cool. And then, yeah. So another cool thing about proportional editing, I'll just undo that, is we have the fall off type. So we have, if we click on it up here, we have smooth, sphere, root, inverse square, sharp. I'm gonna go sharp just to show you how different it can be. Right, so we can get very different looks with the proportional editing tool, just depending on what type of mathematical relationship we're using. So if I use root, we can get some really weird stuff. So the fall off changes quite a lot. Sphere is pretty neat. Just kind of does that. Anyways, I like to use smooth because that's the best one, in my opinion. Random would be pretty weird, but it could, make new things. So, I use the proportional editing tool a lot. Specifically, we're going to be using it to make things not so perfect. So we'll basically have a shape. I'm going to subdivide this whole thing. I'm going to hit A, select all, and then right click, subdivide it, make sure this is set to 0, and then add a couple of these just to show you guys. Enter. Okay, good. So now if we want this to be a little bit asymmetrical, we can select the face and then make sure proportional editing is on, and then move it. And then now we're moving it based off of the radius. We can kind of make it a little bit quirky, right? So we can grab these faces, hit G to move, and then shuffle it around. So that's how we kind of get some of the character in our 3D models. Because if you think about it, when you work in clay or anything like that, nothing is perfect. So that's sometimes a big limitation of hard modeling or just computer modeling in general, is the fact that the inconsistencies that happen in real life and all of the imperfections typically are like removed, because you're using such precision and you're doing things in a way that it doesn't allow for a lot of like organicness, I guess. So sometimes you actually have to add it in and consider, maybe I do want this to be a little bit quirky, or I want it to not be perfect, right? So if I move it and then lock it to my Y direction, I can do that. So it's clearly bent now, and this isn't I don't know why I would want this, but the idea is to show that with proportional editing, it can help you accomplish little bends without having to move each single piece of geometry. So I love that. I use it all the time. I wish there was a way to mask it. There might be. I don't know. I know once we get into sculpting, you can actually mask selections and stuff like that, and it gets a lot more complicated. Dylan can tell you all about it later on, but it's definitely something that it's going to be pretty cool when we get there as well, but just different kind of stuff. So yeah, I think let's just do some questions for the last part. We can talk about smoothing, and then I think that's probably enough for today. We don't want to do too much. Okay, so smoothing. How much do we know about smoothing right now? What do we...
Yeah.
But I mean, these slides did give it away though. You just have to use the sharp option.
Yeah, in Blender, it's weird. So I think I want to make a shape. See how I did that? If I use the loop selection, it's going to do this. Very different. If I don't want to have all that other stuff included, I can go nearest path, which is control, and then click. So it'll basically go zoop all the way down to the last point I clicked on. So that's also handy. But the reason why I'm doing that is just to show you, kind of make a shape to show you smoothing. So then I'm going to move it, and then I'm going to go Y, proportionally edit it so that it's looks like that. That's kind of cool. It's weird, but it'll work. And then just to make it further, yeah, okay. Sorry, one sec. Okay, so shift means remember the last selection and add onto it, just so you guys know. Anytime you're pressing shift, you're basically doing that. So I'm just gonna go and redo this for you guys to see. So I click on the bottom one, I hold down control, and then I go up to here. So this used the nearest or shortest path selection to go from up to here. And then now I'm going to start a new one, so I hold down shift, I click, and then I'm going to hold down control and then go to here. So shift basically allowed me to continue on and add to it. Now that I have those, I'm going to go control and B, and then I'm going to duplicate this. And you see that up top, it's getting messy, so I can only do a little bit. In fact, I can probably just chamfer it, and that's about it. Okay. So, and then it made this, which is kind of gross. Do you guys see this weird triangle? We don't normally want that at all. In fact, it's not really good, but if we want to help with some things, we can distribute it a little bit more. So we hit GG, and look at that. Now we want to turn proportional editing off first. 0 to turn it off. GG, and then we can move it in here. And then what we can actually do is we can now click on this and go Alt M, and then go last, and then click on this, Alt M, last, and then it's a little bit better than it was before. Okay. So now we have this strange shape. So now I want this guy to be smooth. You can see that, actually let's bend it even a little bit more to really enunciate the smoothing. So I'm gonna go G, turn on proportional editing again. Sorry, don't press G just yet. So O, or click on that button. Click on the face you want, G, and then Y. And then let's pull that out. And we'll do something like that. Okay, so that's pretty crazy. Now we got lots of curves. So, to turn on smoothing, we want to right click in the contextual menu and go shade smooth. And you'll see it's like, oh, okay, that's cool, it's smooth, but everything is smooth and there's no sharp lines, it's just kind of gross. So to fix that, we have to go into the right, and then if we go to object data, which is the green triangle, we'll find normals and we'll turn on auto smooth. So that helped a little bit, but just for learning purposes, I'm going to crank up this number. See this angle? It's automatically picking edges based off of the angle, and that's a really quick way to automatically do smoothing groups. It's like crazy fast, extremely helpful, but for UV unwrapping purposes, it's actually sometimes better if you crank it up here and then you manually add your seams, your sharp seams, and then you can tell those sharp seams to be unwrap seams, which is kind of cool. Or you can find the right angle and then you can do an angle select, which is a little bit too advanced for today. Then we'll go to, and then we'll select using the Shift and Alt loop, and then we'll just kind of keep adding to that. And then now in the edge menu, so Control E, we're going to go mark sharp. Do you see the difference that made? Now it's like sharp on the bottom, right? So that this would be equivalent to having this is smoothing group 1 and this is smoothing group 2. It just did it automatically. You don't have to really think about it, which is quite nice. I'll do, okay, here we go. Look at this. So when I do Shift and Alt, it does find a loop, but it gets confused because this is really bad topology. And then here we have a massive gross n-gon, and that's not good. So sometimes to get around that, we can use the shortest path again. So we'll click here and then go Control and click, and then we'll hold Shift to start another path, and then Control to go down here. To show what Dylan was talking about, I'm gonna try to bevel this. Hopefully I don't make the topology even worse, which it is. Okay, so I'll bevel it a little bit, and then okay, so I click, and then do you see the bevel options. We have all kinds of stuff. We have offset, width. So if we want to fine tune it a little bit more in here, we can do that. We can tell it how many segments. It's basically everything that we were doing.
There's a drop down to the width offset, width type offset.
Yeah, exactly. You can do depth.
Percent is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So each one is going to behave differently, right? And you can kind of see.
Maybe not for Angon, it doesn't work.
No. Yeah, this is not. Man, this is so bad. Like the topology of this is a great example of. See, the Ngon is having a really hard time shading this. Anyways, so as soon as I'm done showing you guys smoothing groups, I'm gonna burn this object and never look at it again. Okay, so then I'm gonna go here, Control, and then click, and then Shift to make a new one, and then Control and click, and then we're gonna go Control E to go to Edge menu, and we're gonna mark sharp. So see how marking sharp tells it to put a hard edge there. Okay, so this is a good opportunity to look at Ngon shading. Do you see how this is weird? It's not really nice. So that's typically why we want to avoid Ngons. But I'll go and make a couple more edges sharp just to kind of show you guys what we can do. So this would typically need to be a sharp edge as well, so Control E, mark sharp. That is helping out. And then same with this. I go here, click, and you see when you get really bad topology, selection gets really hard. It really doesn't know what you want to do, so you have to really manually check, because this should never ever happen. But we're doing it just to show you why. Okay, so boom. Okay, so I marked it sharp. It fixed some errors. Still got some errors up here. I can actually save myself some time. Go 3 for face, and then go 2. So what I did is I clicked 3 to select the face, and then by 2, it select the edge of the face. So kind of handy. Control E, and then I want to mark that sharp as well. Not a, not a perfect shape, but it works, I guess. That's how we make it smooth. So if I do shade flat on this object, you see the difference between flat and then smooth?
Yeah.
Pretty big difference. Yeah. So then later on we can take these sharp seams, and then we can actually use these seams to UV unwrap it. In fact, I can just do that right now. And that's why I would actually recommend doing this workflow to start with for UV unwrapping. So I'll go mark sharp. And now everything that's a seam will be an island in UV land. And if we go over here to UV editing, okay, this is all stuff you don't have to know for right now. I just want to show you. I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to go, oh, sorry, wrong one. I'm going to select this this edge, the one that has the sharp edge, and I think it's, no, yeah, Shift G is select similar. I don't know why it's Shift G, but it just is. So I'm going to go select similar, and then I want to go sharpness. And then it'll pick all of these sharp edges, and then I can go Control E to go back to our edge menu, and then go mark seam. And then now all of these are hard edges and their seams. So that's kind of why it's nice to work in that workflow where we're turning auto smooth all the way up. So we have to manually tell the sharp edges where to be, because now when we select everything and then we UV unwrap it, we go, I think it's like, is it U? Yeah, you just hit U. You go unwrap. And then now, if we look on our right side, it's done a pretty decent job unwrapping it, just because those are where the sharp seams are. Naturally, that's kind of where you would put a seam for unwrapping it. We'll learn about unwrapping later. That's like a different class, but to give you an idea, they do kind of work together, which is nice. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. How do we feel? Do we got any questions?
Good.
I'm probably gonna watch the video first before I come up with any questions, so I'm good.
It's a lot of content to review, so
Yeah.
probably
I
good.
kind of I kind of have a good picture of where I need to focus the video on,
Mm-hmm.
because the stuff that is relatively straightforward, I don't have to rewatch that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then I would say take a look at this page, the selection page, and then just kind of get familiar with that, because as I'm going, I'm trying to say it as we do it, but practice selecting, especially when you guys start making objects like your houses and all that, and as we start beveling things and we get more weird topology to play with. Sometimes it's good to show on an object like this, when you have really bad topology, how to kind of select around things. Generally we don't want to ever have to have really bad topology, but when you do get bad topology, that's where you need to get really fancy with selecting. Okay, so yeah, definitely try out these different kinds of selections. The grow selection, unbelievably handy. The Shift G is it's the fancy selection menu. So if you go Shift G, you get all these. You have to go into edit mode. Yeah, that's how you can do select similar, select sharpness, freestyle, all that stuff. We don't have to do this right now, but just to be aware, that's a thing. This is also another version of that same thing. You can go select, and there's things like checker deselect, select loops, more or less, all this stuff. But the ones listed on this page these are the ones we'll be using all the time. Yeah, I'm trying to think of another simple object to make. What do you guys think?
The mystery machine, but without looking at a reference picture.
Oh,
The mystery machine, huh? All right.
yeah. I'm wondering if maybe that might be a little bit hard though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you cheated. Come on.
Oh, sorry. Actually, you know what? This isn't too bad. Why don't we make a crappy version of the mystery machine?
Without the wheels? Alright, I'm down.
But no, wait. I'm thinking with this one in particular, because this one is a good example. See how the wheel wells, it's just a square shape. It's not too hard. Then there's kind of wheels here. The wheels can be simple. This would be interesting to see if we can make that shape. Let's see how far we can go on the mystery machine. If it's super basic, that's no problem as well, but...
I wouldn't bother with the interior for now either.
Oh yeah, do not do the
Just the
interior.
exterior.
Yeah, just
Got
the
it.
outside
But
shape.
complicated thing.
All right. Yeah, that's actually great. That's a great pick of a thing to do. And then try to not look at any more angles than the picture I provided, because that'll be an interesting challenge to try to take that picture with that perspective and then figure out the rest of it, and then try to kind of keep it to that cartoony nature, but actually make it work. That'll be fun. Yeah, okay, right on.
Okay.
Sweet.
I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Alright. Sounds good.
Good night.
Good night.